Hello, friends. It's Jewel here. Welcome to the Tuesday night live stream in our Get Hired private Facebook group. So excited that you're with me. You can give me some likes and loves as long as you can see and hear me okay. You can also drop comments if you would like, and I'm going to check on my other device to make sure that I can see all of your comments. Have something really special, really hot fire for you on this particular evening because guess what? I have with me a an example of a success story right here in real life. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce Rob, and I'm going to let Rob tell his own story. What I really hope to have happen is that when you listen to this story, you really resonate with what Rob experienced, and you really see yourself in the things that he's talking about. Because this story is, yes, to brag on Rob, which is wonderful, but it's also for you to learn, okay? It's also for you to understand the steps that he went through so that you can do the exact same thing. All right, so that is all of my introduction. I'm going to go ahead and introduce Rob Anthony. Rob, take it away. I want you to start everyone off with what your good news is in the first place.
Okay, well, thanks, Jewel. Well, I've over the past weekend, I had been given an offer letter, and which I accepted on Monday, and I've landed a role. So that's great news overall, right?
Awesome. What's the job title?
It's Vice President of Information Technology, which is the role, the exact type of role and level of role that I was seeking. So
Perfect, perfect,
that's great.
perfect. So, how did this come about in the first place? What's the story of how you found out about them, they found out about you? Walk us through that a little bit.
Well, sure. So I think there's really two precursors to the whole thing, and one was in defining what it was I've wanted, because I've had C-level jobs in the past as CIO and some with large companies. And what I focused on was I wanted to be in the SMB market, and that I wanted something that was technically aggressive, and then had help me position my entire profile for that type of opportunity. And then I think just in the last few weeks, perhaps one of your target methods for getting recruiters to notice you, along with having, I think, the outreach to like your best 100 contacts. I was actually in that process, working that process and reaching out to people. Importantly, not just emailing my resume to people, but only particularly emailing. So a brief intro, quick question, intro, and then attaching my resume, but only to people that already knew me and knew my reputation. And as I was working down that lane, someone circled back within about a week and said, this probably isn't right for you, but there's a CEO of a small private company I want to introduce you to. So it was a recruiter that I hadn't worked with in some time, that I used to be their customer, but for the sake of making the reach, right? Like, oh, hey, she probably doesn't want to hear from me, but here you go. So that if you're thinking, hey, should I reach out to this person or not? My mantra would be definitely reach out to them, because that's essentially how I got introduced directly to a CEO, how he then asked me for my resume over a text. And that turned into 2 Zoom calls, a face-to-face interview, a panel interview with 3 other vice presidents, and then, truth be told, a quiz. So be prepared for something that's off the regular interview topic. And then I received a job offer on a Saturday.
This is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
So, the first thing that I think is striking about your process that I really want to kind of drive home for the job seekers who are watching us now and who will watch us on replay is that I hear a lot of human connection in your process. So this is not, like this magical thing where you're at home in the middle of the night banging away on the computer, sending the resume off 100 times, right? This is human to human contact. Would you say that that was, one of the linchpins in your process?
I would absolutely say that is the case. Is that in the case of the recruiter was intimately trusted by the business owner. The recruiter also knew of my reputation and knew me quite well, because when I was in other exec roles, they had been one of my vendors, right? And it's a large recruiting firm. So in reality, though, it was my reputation and contact over some time with the person. But I even had very quickly a few other opportunities in play already that, as another example, fourth largest bank in the country contacted me because someone I went to grad school with a decade ago. Hadn't talked to him so we graduated in 2012, hadn't talked to him since 2014. I was concerned that he would remember me. He remembered me as someone that did something nice for him on his first day on the job back in 2013. And so by knowing a person and just saying, hey, what's the culture like at Synchrony Bank, obviously giant bank, he immediately replied and said, hey, haven't heard from you in a while. You're always nice to me. Can I help in any way? So his role wasn't one of great influence, but in that bank's culture, being referred by an internal employee automatically gets you a reply from a recruiter by name. So that starts. So again, in probably my two best opportunities, one small business, one, megacorp, so to speak, they were both because I looked at my own contacts. And again, I'll circle back to that topic about if you feel uncomfortable, like it's a little bit elbowy for you, like, hey, I haven't contacted him in years. Should I contact him? Just anyone reading this, the answer is yes. Yes,
1,000%.
Yeah.
1,000% yes. So I have two thoughts about that. Number one, it's only an email. So contact the person, whoever it is. No one is going to jump through the computer and kill you because you sent them an email. No one's going to curse you out. Nobody thinks bad things. Everybody's busy. We all have things to do. And you know what? It feels good to get an email from somebody from a while ago, from a couple of years ago. That's point number one. And then point number two, and I talk about that in some of the training that you just mentioned with the Dream 100 and all of the training that I do in the Perfect Job Solution to reach out to people. One of the things that I'm trying to impress upon folks now is that this entire year and a half has actually been such an easy time to reach out to folks because every communication opens with, I hope you and your family are healthy and safe.
Mm-hmm.
How's everybody doing in these COVID times? You can open any email to anybody with that. I don't care if you haven't spoken to them in a decade. Every single person on the planet has something to say about their COVID experience. And hopefully they are, happy and safe. But listen, it's an easy way to just break into the conversation. Even if all you say is, hey, you popped up in my feed. Hey, I was thinking about you. Whatever. Hope everybody's healthy and safe. How are you doing? It's a very easy way to start a conversation these days. So I just want to kind of drive that point home. Take us to the resume and or LinkedIn. So what was your experience there as far as how people received you on LinkedIn? What did they think about it? What did they think about you? Talk about that a little bit.
Well, I would say certainly since we optimized my LinkedIn profile, it's been getting more views and in learning how to manage the kind of the skill matrix and whatnot. But anecdotally, when I went to interview with the CEO and it was just a Zoom call for the first call, he had been given my resume the day before. So in the interesting position, think about this in terms of introduction. So remember, this is a recruiter that the business owner knew this wasn't a fee placement. This was just, I've known her for 16 years. She's known him for 20 years. And she said, hey, even though I'm not representing for this role, this is someone I think would be great for you, right? But once he looked at my resume and he was on a Teams call looking at my resume and I on the same large screen, he actually said, he goes, wow, your resume really says a lot. He goes, but I like how it's summarized at the top in terms of skill sets instead of making, he goes, I would never even read 2 pages. But then more interestingly, after those Zoom calls and subsequent face-to-face interview, his VP of operations who deals with his internal and Asian warehouse team, he said, hey, you know what? I was really looking at you on LinkedIn. I don't prefer to read resumes because I like to see if people's LinkedIn profile is representational of what they put on their resume. And he goes, and it drives me nuts when they don't. So that's that's a key. That was a key there. So it's not just the same decision maker checking off all the boxes. It were different influencers in the hiring process that each had a different view. And the marketing guy, for instance, went to the skills section on my top of my resume and on LinkedIn. He said, hey, you say you know SQL Server. What does that mean? You say that you know other technologies. What exactly does that mean? And I gave him the opportunity to kind of prioritize them for them. So he didn't even talk about the resume or the LinkedIn per se. He was just looking at the list making aspects of both and then using those for his informational interview. So I would say that both the LinkedIn and the resume were important. And another thing I've done for LinkedIn, and this is just a tiny tweak, is I include my LinkedIn URL in my email signature to everybody I email now. Just it's in my email signature. So and then in the case of like you said, with the going back to that bank example, I said, hey, quick question. And I said, hey, how are you? I hope everything's well. And then my question was, hey, what's the culture like at the bank? To which he replied, hey, I see your LinkedIn in your signature. Are you looking for a job right now? I said, well, yeah, I am actually. So it wasn't oh, hey, please, can I have a job? It's the interest and everything. But in particular to the role I accepted, with different stakeholders, the LinkedIn profile had weight, and then to the owner of the company, the resume, I think he said he was struck by the resume, which by implication also means that the recruiter said, hey, I'm representing this person as a personal reference, not just a paid reference. So she must have looked at it and said, okay, this presents well. Because I'm the type of person that I have what I would consider a reverse profile. I worked 17 years for 16 plus years for the same organization, two different company names, but it was the same investment group. But then in the last 10 years, 12 years, I've had 6 jobs, 2 years, 2.5 years, even 1 year and 9 months most recently. And in technology, that still plays well because it's a very transient industry. But I think that the way you helped me summarize it, because each job is kind of like your baby, and you're like, I can't only have 2 bullet points or 3 bullet points.
Right.
But really, when it comes down to, they don't care how many initiatives you did. It's like which one. Well, in tech, it's not which one's making money per se as much, but which ones saved money, avoided risk, and really making those things seem actionable and have it take up this much space. And I think that's something that also worked for them. That's my subjective view.
This is really good because there are a couple of points here that I really want to emphasize that friends, this played out in Rob's life and led him to success. So first of all, one of the decision makers looking at your resume liked that summary at the top. Now, friends, you hear me talk every single week about building your resume on 3 core pillars. It's who you are, what you do, and the value that you bring. And that's what that summary says. So, this is a real life example of how a decision maker looked at that and was very interested in what Rob was bringing to the table. That's
Mhm.
point number 1. Now, in the Perfect Job Solution program, what we're really talking about now is how seamlessly this was executed, and then obviously the success that we ended up with. Because the first thing that I do is the concierge level. Concierge means I'm writing the resume for you, I'm writing the LinkedIn for you, I'm making it match whatever the opportunities are. I'm doing all those things for you. But guess what? There are other levels to this, right? I don't just give you a resume and then, you fly away and you're done. Mm-mm. Because the next thing that has to happen is you have to have mastery. And that's the next thing that I offer. There are some skills that you need to learn and you need to master. And Rob is talking about putting those things into play. So, friends, it's very important to engage human beings in this process. As you listen to this story, you'll notice it's not solely a story of, hey, let's take the resume, send it somewhere, and you have a job by Thursday. it is also not just a story of, well, let's see who he knew and oh, that's how that happened for him. No, friends, it happens in layers. You have to get the story straight in the first place. That's your resume, that's your LinkedIn, that's making the story match the opportunities. Next layer, those skills you have to master. You have to master the skill of reaching back out to your network, mainly because you need something to say besides, hey, I'm job searching right now, and can you look at my resume and do you know of anything? You can't say that to 100 people that you know. It doesn't sound right. So, one of the things that I have you master is how to reach out to people in a value added way, in a way that is not begging, not desperate, not all those things that we all hate about networking, but in a way that has you in a normal conversation, not sounding weird, strange, robotic, and all those things that we also hate. Rob, I want you to talk a little bit more about the last layer, because the last layer has to do with, how you show up in person, on Zoom. And I think you said you had two Zoom calls, a 2-hour interview.
Yeah.
Tell us that
So,
part of the story. What happened there? Because that's the last part that you have to nail in order to land the role. Talk about
right.
that.
So interestingly, yes, two Zoom calls, which were both predicated by the CEO saying that they were all dressed very casually, right? He said, so he goes,
Okay.
don't show up on Zoom with a suit. So while you want to present your best image forward, and me working at banks for a lot, I've got a lot of dark blue and black suits, right? So he just said, hey, just here you go, very casual. So with those two Zoom calls, it was actually he was sharing screens and we were talking some data analysis. So the important aspect is that while we all predict a certain altitude to begin with and then getting more granular, you just got to be prepared for the interviewer to switch gears, right? But so the two Zoom calls were progressively more detailed and elaborate, and then the third call or meeting rather was a half-hour meeting with the CEO, again face to face, a 2-hour meeting with the heads of marketing, operations, and finance, and then another half-hour meeting with the CEO, which then yielded, because it's a very hands-on organization, which is something that I was thinking, frankly. But what then yielded was a list of follow-up questions and a request to make a first 90-day plan, which I recommend. And I'm not some sort of affiliate or anything, but there's a book out there called The First 90 Days, which I recommend for any manager to read and use. So I prepared a 10-page deck, answered about 8 long form questions, just 1 to 2 sentence answers, and then most elaborately was given a set of Excel files to do some data analysis, because that's a very important stake proposition for them. They didn't want to feel that someone couldn't come in and row as they could row. And then just some follow-up questions over the weekend. But the important part was, I think, understanding them. Like, for instance, they insisted, I put on a suit, right? And while I was driving over there with, of course, my matching tie, he goes, oh, you're wearing a jacket? He goes, oh, I guess that's okay, but just please don't show up wearing a tie. And even though the principal of the company is like, don't wear a tie,
Yeah.
trying to take the tie off was the hardest thing. But being sensitive and understanding their desired culture, it's a behavioral match to what they're like. And so, I'll top it off with, my first day is Monday the 1st. And today they called me and said, hey, we actually have our monthly management dinner. The 3 guys and the CEO is this Thursday. And they said, we would like you to come. And it's at a very nice steakhouse. And so I said, I will definitely be there. So something struck them about my approach on the EQ side, as opposed to saying a list. And I think I agree with what you put. You've got a whole phalanx of tools that you talk about, and it isn't like going down a list. It's almost like a Swiss Army knife, right? Where you've got to kind of surmise the best way to approach a certain situation, and then be ready to kind of pivot off in any direction. And it really just circles back to, if you're yourself and you're dealing with a topic, first of all, there's a little bit of anxiety, because no matter how much you want to say the right thing, there's always going to be that situation of you're right for A and not right for B. And you've just kind of got to leave it up to the creator to kind of help you go through that. But just your system is great, in my opinion.
Thank you. I appreciate you saying that. It never occurred to me to call the things that I train people on the Swiss Army knife, but that's exactly what it is. You kind of flip open the blade that you need
That's
in the
right.
moment. And I try to give a lot of things. Um, and what I give, it's a baseline. You know, I'll give you the baseline message. I'll give you the baseline email. I script it all out for you. But then, you know, I really try to impress upon people, okay, take this and make it make sense for the situation that you're in. So I'm going to give you the idea because I really want to move people away from, hey, I'm job searching right now, if you know anybody, because that's all people can think to say. So
Mhm.
I'm trying to give a lot of different scripts, but then you have to take that and you have to make that work for the situation that you're in. So you're right, it is just like the Swiss Army knife, which is great. That's really, really good.
Yeah, because
Tell
if you
me
make it,
about
oh,
Go
sorry,
ahead.
sorry.
No,
If,
okay, tell me about well, go ahead with your next thought.
I
Go
just say,
ahead.
if you make it too canned and then they come back and ask you a question and you don't have a natural reply, I think it's, and I'm sorry to interrupt you there, but that's what kind of just, that makes the stutter step worse, right? So just stick to what you know is what I would recommend to people, and make it natural conversation. I agree 100%.
You know, this has to be authentic. That's the reason that I build the resume the way that I do in the first place. That's the reason that I come into this group week in and week out and I'm beating people over the head. Get rid of the fake keywords. Stop being detail oriented. Stop thriving in a fast paced environment. You never say these things in a normal conversation. When you go to that dinner on Thursday, you're not going to say those things. That's not what you're going to be talking about. So you have to be authentic from the very beginning. And that starts with the story. It progresses with what you're going to say to people. Yes, you take my training. Yes, you take my messaging. You have to make it yours. It can't be Jules' words. It has to be your words. Jules' words can only give you the idea. And then obviously, you can only be you when it comes time for the Zoom, the phone, and the interview, because I can't sit there over your shoulder and do it. But what I really want to emphasize is how important it is to tell that authentic story. How important it is, and I don't want to be cliche, but you do have to be yourself because that's who you are, and you can't put on a show during the interview or series of interviews. It's kind of like, dating, how you show up with your representative, the first month or three
Right.
or whatever. After a while, that's going to wear off. So
Right.
it's there's a similar situation in job search. So when you're talking to people, just, be normal. When you're interviewing, understand that folks, you get invited into an interview in the first place because fundamentally they liked a lot of what you had to say. They
Right.
liked the resume. They looked at LinkedIn. LinkedIn confirmed what was on the resume. Somebody talked to you on the phone. You're moving all through these processes and these steps. They like you more and more. So I do encourage you, be you. I also, because I don't really have a lot of students or anything in this group, most people are have 20 years of experience, this type of thing. You all are not brand new to this game. So you have enough knowledge, you have enough expertise to just go in and talk about that. That's what they want from you. That's what they're looking for. They're looking for you to be normal person, fits in with the culture, knows what he or she is talking about, seems like you can hit the ground running. When you demonstrate those things in the interview, those things really do add up to a winning formula. And I feel like Rob has played out all of those steps, which is why I want you to pay attention to these different elements of his story. So, how do you feel? You look calm, cool, and collected. You look relaxed and happy. You've landed this role. Oh, tell us, how long did you go from, finding out about this until the offer? And then let's end with how it all feels.
Well, so I think this was an exceptionally good case, but it took about 3 weeks in this case. But it's a very fast moving market, right? I mean, I think people tend to move quickly now because they don't want to lose candidates. So I just felt that the market conditions were also in my favor. And of course, it feels fantastic. It's a smaller organization, which is what, in trying to figure out what we want on my resume and LinkedIn to say, it was part of that, of figuring out what one wants to do going forward. So that is fantastic. And of course, I feel fantastic because what it seems is those the smaller company and the tightly held environment that they live in, or the closely knit in environment, is that to them it was important that they find someone that would fit not only skill wise but also culturally, that they would like, and they seem to be a very social group. So I feel fantastic. I mean, I know that not having a role brings anxiety, and to fold that back to the point you're making, all I can tell is just, not everyone likes everybody. So being yourself and not getting a role might create a little anxiety, but if you put on a front to try to impress somebody, then you got to live that front for potentially years. What's that going to do to you? So just be yourself, and whatever happens will happen. And having an approach like yours, it's helped me, and it's much appreciated. I feel fantastic.
Rob, thank you so much for sharing your story with me. Thank you so much for sharing your story with the people. I really want you job seekers to see yourselves in this story. Rob hit all the major points of what can and should be happening in order to move your job search forward. And you heard him, 3 weeks from start to finish. And he's saying that's an exceptionally good case. That's not really true. We have a bunch of people who, friends, it takes a matter of weeks. It's important to do all the layers. It's important to have a structured process. It's important to have a system. And this is the system that works. Okay, we're going to go ahead and wrap things up for this edition of the Tuesday Night Live Stream. Rob, thank you for being with us. Friends, I will continue to see you inside of our group.
Thanks, Jewel.